So, there was a post going around compiling all the critic scores and user scores for the Pokemon games on Switch. Not all of them, but the main lines and the remakes and the spin offs. Basically everything besides new Pokemon Snap and like the re release of Pokémon Tournament and all that stuff. But I had never looked at these scores because I don't care. Like, I don't care what critics have to say or even what other people have to say. I only care if I like it, really. They basically never have a sway on whether or not I buy something. So let's take a look at this. First off is Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee. The critic score of 7.9 and a user score of 6.4. Now it's funny because I think 7.9 for critics is a bit generous, while 6.4 is a bit harsh. I would give it like a 7 myself, like a straight up 7, So it kind of balances out. Like the critics are a little kind, while the users were a bit harsh. But it's pretty much what it deserves because it was just another remake, but with Let's Go Pokemon Go mechanics, and didn't have all the content from Fire Red and Leaf Green, which was a huge problem. So it was kind of lacking in content, and it was just average, slightly above average for a Pokemon game, because it did what it set out to do. It was a Gen 1 remake. It just could have been a bit more, and the whole Pokemon Go catching thing is either something that you either loved or you hated. I thought it was the only thing that really kept the game somewhat interesting, because if it didn't have that, well, then it would just be another inferior remake of the original Red and Blue, because we already have Fire Red, Leaf Green, so that was way better. So they had to do something, but whatever. Moving on, Sword and Shield, 8 on critic score and 4.7 on user score. Now this is the first example of review bombing. Like, yeah, Sword and Shield are not great. That 8 is very, very generous, but it's not as bad as a 4.7. Like that's, like I said, obvious review bombing. That's why I don't pay attention to these scores, because there's obvious review bombing going on a lot of the time. And sometimes even vice versa, so I don't care. I don't care about these scores, but I just think it's kind of funny. Because you can just see, it's like anyone who didn't know anything about like Sword and Shield's controversy would be so confused right now. Because it's like, how can it be an 8 for the critics, but 4.7 on users? Like, what's going on? But of course, if you were around at the time, you know why the user score is like that. Even though the games aren't really that bad. So, I don't know. I mean, Sword and Shield, like I said, it's kind of a guilty pleasure for me. It's definitely got a lot of problems. And like I said, 8 is definitely way too generous. But yeah, it's not a 4.7, But yeah, that's what happens, If you were there, you know. If you weren't, you're probably confused. Then we move on to Brilliant Diamond Shining Pearl with a 7.3 critic score and 4.9 user score. Now, this could be... See, the thing is, I don't even know if this one is review bombing, because I would agree with that user score. These games are not good. I don't know how it got a 7.3 from critics. It's the lowest score we've seen so far, but still, in my opinion, too generous. And I would say that a 4.9, which is almost a 5, is appropriate for Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl. They're not as good as Platinum, so they're kind of pointless as remakes. And they kind of have the same problem as Let's Go, except minus the Go catching thing. It's just an inferior remake. And they brought in some modern day stuff, but then left some of it out. And then the whole thing was just a mess. It didn't even work at launch. They patched it pretty quickly, but it didn't work at launch. So I would say a 4.9 is about what you should give this game. It would be even worse at launch, because at launch it didn't even really work. So it's shipped without a title screen for at least a proper one. So yeah, they did fix it quickly, but it still deserves that 4.9 user score, I would say. I do not think that is review bombing, because while Sword and Shield may be better than a 4.7, I don't think BDSP is better than a 4.9. Then we get to Legends Arceus, the best reviewed game of this generation by both critics and user score, and I would agree with that, because it is easily the best game that we've gotten on the Switch in terms of Pokemon. And it's also interesting that they're very close, 8.3 and 8. So the critics were slightly more generous, as they seem to be. But I would say 8 is a good score for Legends Arceus. It's not perfect. It has a lot of the same Pokemon problems, unfortunately, but they definitely made a lot more of an effort here. And it was a breath of fresh air. I've gone on about it all the time. It's easily the best game of this generation. So moving on. Scarlet Violet, 7.2 critic and 3.8 user score. Again, I do not think that is review bombing. That is what this game deserved. 3.8, because at launch, that game did not work. So, I don't even know how it got a 7.2. How do you score anything above like a 5 if it doesn't even work? That's why, again, why I don't trust these scores. Like, critics they don't seem to care if a game works or not. Like, if I was a critic, personally, if a game didn't work, that's like an automatic fail. Like, it doesn't matter what good things you have, like characters or story graphics, whatever. If the game doesn't work, then what's the point? You know? So yeah, obviously that 7.2 is complete BS, but I would agree with that 3.8 user score. Like I said, I don't think that's review bombing. That is what it deserved. Now, if you want to see another example of review bombing, well, look at Legends ZA. 7.8 from critics and 4.8 from users. Like, yeah, Legends ZA is not a 4.8. There's no way it is not worse than Brilliant Diamond Shining Pearl. You know, because I got a 4.9. Yeah, Legends ZA is way better than BDSP. It's way better. It's the best game since Arceus, and probably the best game besides Arceus on here. But after Scarlet and Violet, people are just sick of Pokemon's BS. And I think these scores, user scores, will continue to be review bombed, even if the game is not bad, because they are just so sick of Pokemon's BS. That's why Winds and Waves has got to be good. You know, I wouldn't be surprised if people would even bomb Pokepia. You know, just because they're still angry about Scarlet and Violet. As far as critics score, 7.8, yeah, I'd agree with that. It's not as good as Arceus in my opinion. It's still pretty good. I still had a lot of fun with it. But yeah, it is slightly worse than Arceus. I would agree with that. I'm not sure what score I would give it, but I do think it's worse than Arceus. And yeah, 4.8 is definitely a result of review bombing, because it's not that bad, guys. Come on. Like, I know you're frustrated. I am too with Pokemon. But take it out on the games that deserve it. You know? Like, Scarlet and Violet, BDSP, they did deserve it. Pokemon Legends, in my opinion, did not deserve that. But it doesn't really matter. It still sold well. and maybe it would have done better if they put more money into it. It was made on the cheap, and you can tell. But anyway, so those are the review scores. Like I said, I normally don't look at these things because I don't find them to be very helpful whatsoever. Like if I was on the fence of buying one of these things, I wouldn't know what to think. Except for Legends Arceus, it's like, okay, obviously that one is good, but all the other ones, it's kind of like, wait, what? The critics like it, but people don't. It's like all of them have bad user scores except for Legends Arceus, and some of it is deserved, and some of it's just review bombing. You know, but you can never tell which is which unless you're really in the know. So that's why I think all these scores and stuff are never helpful. You know? But, you know, whatever. It is what it is. Let me know what you guys think of all this, and I'll see you next time.